Greenbat Media Productions.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر.
The previous surah said, أَلْهَاكُمُ التَّكَاثُرُ حَتَّى زُرْتُمُ الْمَقَابِرِ. You were deluded by your want of having more and more and more, which was a loss. And the next surah is going to be وَيْلٌ لِكُلِّ هُمَزَةٍ لُمَزَةٍ. And there you find كَلَّا لَيُنْبَذَنَّ فِي الْحُطَمَةِ. The person is being thrown into the hellfire, نَارُ اللَّهِ الْمُوقَدَةِ. So there's loss before and there's loss after, and then in the middle is the surah that says, إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ. This is the surah of loss. It's situated between those two. The other thing to note about this surah, Allah Azza wa Jal, the last thing He told us was, ثُمَّ لَتُسْأَلُنَّ يَوْمَئِذٍ عَنِ النَّعِيمِ. On that day you are certainly going to be asked in regards to the favor and the blessings that you enjoyed. And this surah begins with the greatest blessing that we enjoy. So Allah says you'll be asked about all the blessings, but what's the biggest blessing? It's time itself. Then the previous surah talked about the great distraction. At-takathur. We talked about takathur being something that alhaakum at-takathur, it distracted you. We're too busy wanting more, competing and getting more, showing off what we have to others. This is what we're busy with. But the previous surah didn't tell us what are you distracted from. Usually Allah says, لا تلهكم أموالكم ولا أولادكم عن ذكر الله. Don't let your money and kids distract you. But He doesn't stop there. He says distract you from the remembrance of Allah. There's a from. But there was no from in the previous surah. What are we being distracted from? That's the question that's left open. And in this surah we find, what is it that most human beings are distracted from and they don't do? إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. When we go into the detail and these lessons of this last ayah of Surah Al Asr, we'll find this is what most human beings are not concerned with. We're preoccupied with other things. They're distracted from this task. And this is the only task that can save them from loss. Subhanallah. The central term in the previous surah, the central term was takathur. And the central term of this surah is actually khusr, loss. At-takathur means to gain and want more and more and more. Khusr literally means to lose your most essential assets. We find this surah is also very similar in many respects actually to Surah Al-Teen. And in that surah Allah Azza wa Jal says, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ فَلَهُمْ أَجْرٌ غَيْرُ مَمْنُونَ. Famous surah, right? إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Here what does He say? Something similar. He says إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, but says it a little differently. This time He says وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. It's a little bit different. Here also there's mention of the human being, al-insan, إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ. In that surah Allah also mentioned the human being. He said لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. So there's mention of human beings in both. There's a mention of those who believed and did righteous deeds in both of them. But there, you could compare them together as far as their theme and their structure as negative reinforcement compared to positive reinforcement. But when you combine the two lessons together, you learn some very remarkable things. There Allah said the human being is created in the best possible form. Here He said, roughly translated, every human being is in a state of loss. If he's created in the best possible form, then why would he be in a state of loss, right? Then it's a tragedy that you're even qualified to be successful, and yet still you ended up being a loser. you still ended up losing. So Allah Azza wa Jal did not tell us that the human being is in loss first. He told us the human being is qualified to be successful first. And it's his own failure that leads him to become of those who have lost. Inna al-insana lafi khusr. This comes later on. But that declaration is earlier. In this surah, Allah Azza wa Jal mentions 4 things at the end. You all know this. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. 4 things. But 3 of those, or 2, the last 2 things that are tawasi over and over, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ, they're both actions. Roughly translated, they are communicated as enjoying the truth, to enjoin perseverance. That's how an average translation addresses the subject matter of وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. But they're actions. What's the ayah? What's the part of the ayah before that? وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. They do good things. They act right. They act out righteous deeds. Isn't that also actions? So Allah Azza wa Jalla mentions iman, which is a thing inside of you. It's not outside, it's on the inside. Then He mentions amal, وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. But He usually only says those 2 things. He doesn't go further. But here what does He say? وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, and then adds 2 specific kinds of actions. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. The lesson from that is, these are the actions that people will overlook. Then there's the issue of just the word wa between all of the conditions that Allah put. You know what wa does as opposed to aw? Right? Wa, what it is it's something you have to meet. The only exception to these people are people who do A and B and C and D. Which means, how many of those things do they have to do? All of them. If you put an or in between them, what happens? You could do some others, right? But if you put and in between them, then the only people who will meet the exception are people who fulfill all the conditions. So this declaration in this surah is very powerful, and the exception is only one exception, but anyone who wants to be the exception will have to meet 4 conditions. Usually in the Quran, Allah mentions 2 conditions. Which 2 conditions? الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Those He mentions 2 conditions. But in this surah, He mentions how many? He mentions 4 conditions. Now, in this series of discourse, what I want to share with you is, in the previous surahs, Allah has made comments about the human being. In other words, that you remember Al-Hakum Al-Takathur? Allah is actually directly complaining to the human being in that surah, saying, what deluded you? What was it that took you away from your gracious master? Then Allah said, Ya ayyuhal insan innaka kadihun ila rabbika kadhan famulaqih. You forgetful human being, you are chugging away towards your Lord. Like it or not, you are headed towards your Lord, effort after effort after effort, and you're eventually going to meet Him. There's no avoiding it. You could be distracted all you want, you're still headed in that direction. Then He told the human being, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَدٍ. We created the human being in enormous toil, meaning the life of the human being is full of labor. Whether you want to live like a believer or live like a kafir, doesn't matter, you're still going to have to work. So your life is created in struggle. Why not make it a struggle that will benefit you here and the next life? And why should you have concern for the next life? Allah Azza wa Jalla said, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. He went further a few surahs later. We created the human being in the best possible form. He was designed to achieve high things. But unfortunately, he wasn't able to achieve those high things, because what do we find in this surah? إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ. Important considerations before we get into the surah itself. One more is the general principle versus the exception. Whenever you use the word illa, except, you are talking about what we call in English an exception. What is in majority? What is more in number? The rule or the exception? The rule is in more number and the exception is very few. You say everybody came except that one. Now in this surah, what is the rule? What is the majority situation? وَالْ عَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ. That's the rule. Human beings are immersed in loss, in doom. What's the exception? إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. By presenting the exception as those who believe and do good deeds, etc., that we're going to study, by presenting them in the form of an exception, what we're learning here is this is not going to be a lot of people. This is going to be few. The vast majority of human beings will be in loss. That's the rule. And the exceptions will be a few. May Allah Azza wa Jal make us from the exceptions.
Media Productions.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر.
So now, we talked about Surah Al-Tin having more of a style of tabshir, and this one having more of a style of indar, meaning good news versus warning. The other thing that's very important to highlight is Surah Al-Tin mentioned ajr. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ فَلَهُمْ أَجْرٌ غَيْرُ مَمْنُونٍ. Right? This surah doesn't mention any ajr. Ajr means reward. There Allah said, a reward that will never be discontinued, a reward that will never be forbidden from them. He uses those words. But in this surah, there's no mention of reward. The only mention is human beings are in loss except these people. But He doesn't say, and these people will get Jannah, and these people will get everlasting life, all of it, nothing. No mention of what they will get. The only thing that's mentioned is, these people are failures, and these people escaped. This surah is not talking about higher levels of success. Other surahs talk about success. They deal with what jannat, what gardens, what treasures. That's the subject matter of other surahs. This surah, the subject of it is, who is not a failure. This surah is not about success, it's more about survival. What is the difference between talking about success and talking about survival? What's the difference between the two? You see, survival is something, when your survival is being questioned, you forget everything else. When you're drowning, when you're in a building with fire in it, right? When there's a danger headed your way, when your survival is in question, you forget everything. And when your survival is in question, there's no time for you to talk about your what? Success. There's no need to talk about success. I mean, if you're working in an office and you're talking to your boss about getting a promotion, what are you talking about? Success. But the building went on fire, and you say, let me finish talking about my promotion first. I haven't just finished negotiating with. Does that make any sense? No. Because you can't talk about success unless you've already secured your own survival. You understand? That's the urgency of this surah. The bare minimum. The survival. And you know, it doesn't make any sense for someone to talk about or be concerned with anything else other than survival if they are not meeting the conditions of that survival. Imagine you have to get out of that building and there are 4 doors and all of those doors are locked. Until you unlock all 4, you shouldn't be worried about anything else. These are the 4 locks. Al-Iman, Al-A'mal al-Salihah, Tawasib al-Haq, Tawasib al-Sabr. These are the locks to your survival. You have to unlock all of these things so you and I can survive. That's the scenario that's being drawn for us in this profound surah. I want to mention just some overview things. So within that, I want to say one of the comments is the difference between khusr, which is used here, and 2 other words that occur in the Quran that are similar. There's the word khasara, okay, like in Surah Nuh. وَاتَّبَعُوا مَنْ لَمْ يَزِدْ مَالُهُ وَوَلَدُهُ إِلَّا خَسَارًا. Not إِلَّا خُسْرًا, but إِلَّا خَسَارًا. So there's one word that's a variation of khusr. Another word that occurs in the Quran is khusran. Khusran. So you got 3 words now. You got khusr, you got khasara, and you got khusran. What's the difference between them, and what's the benefit of using khusr in this surah? First of all, let's talk about the word khasara. Khasara means a loss above a pre-existing loss. There's already loss, and you're adding to that loss. That is called khasara. If Allah had used that word, then we would have already been in trouble, and we're adding to that trouble. But Allah actually, by using khusr, a lesson we're learning is we're not in trouble. We're not in trouble, but we put ourselves in trouble. It's not like we were in trouble to begin with. So let's see how khasara, this word which means basically loss above a pre-existing loss, how it's used in the Quran. وَنُنَزِّلْ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ مَا هُوَ شِفَاءٌ وَرَحْمَةٌ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَلَا يَزِيدُ الظَّالِمِينَ إِلَّا خَسَارًا. وَلَا يَزِيدُ الظَّالِمِينَ إِلَّا خَسَارًا. We do not increase wrongdoers in nothing more but loss. Wrongdoers, are they already in loss? Yes. And Allah increases them. You see the way it's being used? Similarly, we find, as I mentioned in Surah Nuh, وَاتَّبَعُوا, and they followed مَنْ لَمْ يَزِدْهُ مَالُهُ وَوَلَدُهُ إِلَّا خَسَارًا. The one who wouldn't increase him or his wealth or his children in anything more than loss. In other words, they ended up following people that are losers to begin with, and following them would make them even more of a loser. Now, this is the first benefit of not using khasar in this surah as opposed to using khusr. But then there's the word khusran, very powerful word. Khusran means incredible loss, excessive loss, unimaginable loss. You have to empower the meaning of that word because it's got an at the end. When you put an at the end of a word in Arabic, it empowers it. Like you know how we say Ar-Rahman? It's not just merciful, it's incredibly merciful. When you say ghadban, it's not just angry, it's furious, it's enraged. So when you say khusran, it's empowered, loss. It's amazing amount of loss. Let's see how that's used in the Quran. Allah says, خَسِرَ الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ ذَلِكَ هُوَ الْخُسْرَانُ الْمُبِينُ. He lost dunya and akhirah. That is ultimate loss. Isn't that the ultimate loss? What's so bad about that situation? It's not something light. He didn't just lose one thing, he lost both things. Ad-dunya wal-akhirah. So this is loss upon loss. This is the ultimate loss. Al-khusran al-mubin. So because it's still loss but not the ultimate loss, the word that is balanced and appropriate in this surah is إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ. If it was in the hellfire, then what would the word be? The khusran. Lafi khusran. Because that's the ultimate loss. You couldn't get any worse loss than that. We talked about the difference between two things, success and survival. We talked a little bit about survival, but we didn't talk about the other thing, which is what? Success. Every single human being, in their head, they have an understanding of what it means to be successful. Every single human. Doesn't have to be Muslim. Every human being. Doesn't have to speak your own language. Every culture, every society, every man, woman, and child aspires to something that they consider success. For your kid, it may be getting a good grade. Success. For you, it may be a promotion or getting a job or making a lot more money than you do now or getting a certain car or marrying a certain person or buying a house. Whatever it may be, there's something in your head that you consider success. And there are some people you look at and you don't even have to think about it. As soon as you see them, the thought that crosses your mind is, that guy's pretty successful. Now look, let's take some ancient examples. Who had the celebrity crib in ancient Egypt at the time of Musa alayhi salam? Fir'aun, huh? You could see his house from miles away. I mean, that's some pretty good architecture. It's still around. Right? It's pretty solid foundation. It's a world monument. And yet, is he a success? One of the biggest examples of failure. And look at Qarun in the Quran. Does he have a nice, big enough vault that people have to carry the keys to? But horrible failure. Then on the other hand, you have, if somebody gets deported from a country, you would consider that a failure. It's pretty embarrassing and humiliating, isn't it? Was Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam expelled, literally deported from Mecca? He was. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam had to live in a cave, eating off of shrubs. Sallallahu alayhi wasallam. The greatest example of success, and yet he's living, and if you saw somebody living like that today, you would not think success. That's not what would cross your mind. If somebody gets kicked out of their home, they become homeless, it's a failure. Ibrahim alayhi salam, does he get expelled from his home? He does. And yet, one of the greatest examples of success in human history. What are we learning from these examples? We're learning that the way we think about success and failure is not the way Allah wants us to think about success and failure. The lesson to learn in this surah is all human beings are in a desperate need to survive. وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ. Human beings are drowned in loss. Human beings are lost. They're in loss, immersed in it. What does that tell you? That tells you that there are no exceptions. There are no exceptions. Allah doesn't say إِنَّ الْكَافِرَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ. Some Mufassirun commented, al-insan ay al-kafir. We'll talk about that. Like the human being, it's referring to the kafir. When Surah Al Asr was revealed, وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ. Those who only heard that much said, what are we going to do? Until the exception came and gave them relief. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. So this exception becomes critical because this becomes a matter of our survival. This becomes a matter of our survival. And if we don't address this, then there's no point talking about success. There is no success then. We have to rearrange our thinking in regards to the demands that are being placed on us in terms of this surah.
Greenberg Media Productions.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر.
The first thing we're going to talk about today is the fact that this is one of the surahs that belongs to a score of surahs that begin with oaths. You know, the rough translation, if I was to say, Wal Asr, I swear by time. That's a very coarse translation, but still, the point that's coming across is Allah Himself is taking an oath. He's swearing by something. What's the benefit of Allah Azza wa Jal swearing? There are a few. One of them is to acknowledge the grandeur, the magnificent nature of something. Whatever Allah swears by is something profound and magnificent, something that demands reflection. In other words, Allah is calling the human being's attention to reflect on the passage of time. That's one meaning. The second, in this surah there's also the object of the oath, wal asr. What's the object? Al Asr. What's the subject? Innal insana lafi khusr. Allah says He swears by time, or by the passage of time, and then He declares that all human beings are immersed in a state of loss. So there's the object being time, and the subject being the loss of the human being. When this happens, typically in the Quran and also in ancient Arabic rhetoric, the object is actually a proof of the subject. In other words, if you say human beings are in loss, and somebody says, what's your proof? What is the one thing human beings are losing all the time? Time. Right? Where this is an asset we can never keep. We can never hold on to this hour, this minute, this second. It is leaving us, and it will continue to leave us. It is not something you can store and use later on. Another way Al-Asr is understood is, Asr is also, it refers to the life of nations. Right? So when Allah uses the word Asr, it doesn't just refer to the passage of a time of a day, and that's only, or the life of one person, but the life of an entire nation. And these rises and falls of nations themselves are proof that human beings are in loss. Then you go further and we find that the oath, that the object of the oath is a witness for the subject of the oath. This is different now. We said two things. The object is a proof of the subject, that's one thing. The second is the object is a witness for the subject. In other words, how we understand that now in Surah Al Asr is Allah is bringing time as a witness to something. What is time supposed to witness? That no doubt human beings are immersed in loss. What does that mean? You and I, and humanity at large, they run after things. We run after things that are actually distractions from our real purpose in life. Alhaakum at-takathur. It deluded you. The want of more, the mutually shared urge to get more and more. It distracted you from your real purpose. Now, are we the first people to run after wealth? Or to run after a house? Or to run after getting married to a beautiful woman? Or this or that? Whatever it may be. Are we the first to run after these things? Or were there people before that ran after these things too? There were. And people ran after them thinking that they are going to have success. When they get them, they will have success. And time, Allah made time a witness that people came and they ran after these things and they failed. And then other people came and they ran after these things and they failed again. And other people came and did the same thing again. Thousands upon thousands of years, hundreds upon hundreds of generations, one after another, the same drama over and over again, and one creation of Allah has been watching it happen. It's witness to this thing over and over again. It's almost as though when it sees our struggles, it says, here we go again. Here's another one. So in other words, time is a witness to the tragedy of human life, the tragedy of the human being's aspirations headed in the wrong direction. So time is being brought as a witness against us, or a witness to the tragedy of the human being. One of the meanings of Asr is time that is running out, or the last ebb of time, the last portion of time. Even Salat Al Asr is the last part of the day, right, when time's running out. And classically speaking, Asr was the time in ancient society, especially in Arab society, when the merchant and the traveler, they're always in a hurry. Because when it's nightfall, there's a lot of danger, and they can't protect their assets and things like that. So the most hustle and bustle happens when? At Asr time. That's the busiest, most urgent time. In other words, the next lesson we're learning here in this surah as we go on is, whatever Allah has to say, the time for you and me to react is not a lot of time. We need to act quickly because the dawn of our life has set upon us. That's being captured in just the words Al Asr. So this last benefit of this oath is a sense of urgency.
Greenback Media Productions.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر.
Now we're going to look at a linguistic analysis of the word asr itself. The word asr comes from a verb, literally means he pressed it, he squeezed it, he drenched it. When you squeeze a fruit and you get juice out of it, Arabic word for juice is asir, to squeeze something. This is the first meaning. Then in the Quran we find وَفِيهِ يَعْصِرُونَ. This is the interpretation of the dream by Yusuf alayhi salam. And they will squeeze juice. How in the ancient times they used to press grapes, stomp on grapes to make wine, or olives and other things like that. That's the word being used for squishing them, to actually bring the wine out of them or the juices out of them. Then the Asr is, this is something we mentioned before, but I'll tell you where it comes from now. Ash-Shihab says, Asr is a period of time during which someone passes away. And is also a period of time that in history where a nation became extinct, or a nation came to its end, which is tied to what we were saying in the beginning. A state of emergency and also the tragedy of human history. That's the two themes that are connected in the meaning of Asr. Then finally, a couple more. I didn't do it at the time I was supposed to do it. So Asr is used as a time you are supposed to do something. By understanding that implication of Asr, what we're learning in Wal Asr Innal Insana Lafi Khusr is human beings are in loss, and the time to change the way they are supposed to do it is right now. This is the time to change immediately. Let's get to Innal Insana Lafi Khusr. First of all, the word inna. Inna is used in the Arabic language, not just to mean certainly, but to talk to a group of people that are in doubt about what you are saying. By using the word inna in Innal Insana Lafi Khusr, we are already learning that most human beings, when they hear this, guess what? They don't believe it. Now let's look at the word insan quickly. The word insan comes from different roots, it's argued. One of them is nisyan, forgetfulness. And part of that is the human being can be reminded that he's in really, really deep trouble, but what happens soon after? Forgets. So the word insan, as opposed to al-fard, the individual, an-nafs, the person. There are different words that are alternatives. Al-bashar, the people, an-nas. But al-insan here, two benefits of it. One, to allude to our forgetfulness. And two, the word insan is individual, it's called ism lil jins. The benefit of knowing that is, this word includes two things. It includes all categories, meaning all human beings, and at the same time it's singular. Now we're dealing with the part lafi khusr. Lafi khusr. So this statement, grammatically speaking, is the strongest it could possibly be. First of all, there are two kinds of sentences in Arabic, jumla fi'liya and ismiya. This is ismiya. This is the first thing that makes it stronger. The second is, instead of saying al-insanu fi khusr, it's inna al-insan. This is harf al-tawqid. This is a preposition used only for the purpose of strengthening what you're about to say. So there's a second reason that it's stronger. The third reason that it's stronger is the word al-insan has al on it, which is lil jins. It's every single human being, adding another degree of emphasis. Then on top of that you have lafi. It's not just fi khusr, it is lafi khusr. This lam, typically you have the word the word fi rather. لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. There's just fi. But this is lafi. Lam here is very difficult to translate, but it basically has the same function rhetorically as inna. Certainly, certainly. Another tool of empowerment. Then you have, it's not inna al-insana la khasir. The human being is a loser. Lafi khusr. He is in loss. You know, someone being a loser is one thing. And by the way, ism fa'il in Arabic, it implies something that's happening right now. But by using the preposition, it becomes a constant state. He is immersed in it. He's been in it. He's going to stay in it, kind of thing. It's a scenario that's being depicted. So the word fi here adds to that. So one after another, after another, after another mechanism by which this statement has been emphasized. And above and beyond all of that, Allah began with wal asr, by taking an oath. Now we get to the last ayah, inshallah ta'ala, of this surah. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. The first comment we will make is that when Allah mentioned the loss of the human being, the singular was used. Al-insan. Even though it refers to all human beings, the singular was used. But when it came to the exception, He used the plural. He used the plural. So we have to understand this transition from the singular to the plural. What we learn here is these few people, the only way they will survive is if they stick together. They cannot be apart. They have to remain connected to this ummah. The unity of this ummah and the believers sticking together is embedded in this ayah as part of our survival because of the use of the plural. So the word amal is beautiful here, that Allah Azza wa Jal tied the exception to a collective affair. So that's one of the things about the transition from singular to plural. The other thing we should talk about here is إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Allah Azza wa Jal in this ayah didn't mention any qualifications of iman. Basically, the fruit of iman essentially is tranquility at the heart of it. The fruit of iman is tranquility. Remember we said human beings are in loss? What are the losses of the human being? Loss of health, loss of wealth, loss of loved one, right? These are the kinds of losses human beings suffer in this world. But if you have iman, then you know that this world is not permanent. This world is temporary. And what Allah has in the akhirah compared to this world is nothing. Then Allah Azza wa Jal mentions وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. First, the word amal in Arabic is similar to another word called fi'l. There's amal and there is fi'l. Amal is a conscious action, while fi'l is it can also be a subconscious action. For example, fi'l is I'm breathing right now. That's not a amal, that is what? It's a fi'l. I'm walking. That can be a fi'l because I'm not necessarily thinking about every step. But when you speak to someone, when you go to work, when you drive your car, right? So here Allah Azza wa Jal is making us, one thing we're realizing is we are answerable for every single act that we did consciously. And then the word after it, amilu as-salihat. The word as-salihat is actually an adjective. It comes from the word salaha, which means to reconcile and to rectify. They do goods, literally, if you want to rough translate it, goods. But good in and of itself in English, that doesn't even sound right. Good is an adjective, but an adjective requires a noun. Good deeds. Well, the good is here in the word salih. Where's the word deeds? It's not there in the Arabic. That word would have been وَعَمِلُوا الْأَعْمَالَ الصَّالِحَاتِ. Now the thing that I want to highlight here are a couple of things. The first thing is the word al-a'mal in Arabic is considered, it's a broken plural. And broken plurals are supposed to have feminine adjectives. So typically you would say al-a'mala as-salihata. You would put a ta marbuta on as-salihah, and that would be done. righteous deeds. But Allah Azza wa Jal says al-a'mala, and understood, but He says as-salihati. This is the feminine plural form. So what's the difference between saying as-salihata, just putting a ta marbuta as we would expect, and instead of putting the ta marbuta, putting the feminine plural form? Well, the difference is, from a balagha point of view, if you put the ta marbuta, then those are many, many, many deeds. But when you put the feminine plural, this is considered a plural of minimum. Meaning Allah is saying righteous deeds that I'm asking you to do are not countless. They are just a few. I'm not asking a lot of you. And the fact that Allah hasn't asked us for much is inside the word of salihat. Had it been a salihah, there would have been a lot more. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ.
And we are left now with the final two items in the final ayah of Surah Al Asr, at-tawasi bil-haqq and at-tawasi bil-sabr, these two items. First of all, let's understand that from a literary point of view, Allah Azza wa Jal could have said وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَالصَّبْرِ. But Allah Azza wa Jal, and it could have been emphasized a degree above that by having said وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَبِالصَّبْرِ. That would have been a degree above in emphasis. But then a third degree above that is وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. So this is the most emphatic form of saying this statement. So when we talk about tawasi bil haqq, first of all, the linguistic analysis of tawasi, it is to leave a will or a legacy. That's what the word comes from. And when you leave someone a will and a legacy, then already you have the utmost sincerity and genuine concern for the one that's going to be left behind. And there's a sense of urgency in the counsel and the advice that you're going to leave with them. But then the phrase bil haqq can be understood in three ways. The preposition ba in bil haqq can be understood in three ways. And each of those three ways come together to formulate the full meaning of this expression. First of all, the ba here can be understood as an adverb. It could be an adverbial phrase. What that would mean in English is they counsel each other truthfully. In other words, instead of saying with truth or to truth, I translated it as truthfully. I made it an adverb. In other words, when they do that counsel to one another, they are extremely truthful when they do it. Bil haqq can also be understood, if you want to compare it to an English expression, it could be with truth. What this means is when you counsel someone, you counsel them with Quran. In other words, when you're giving each other counsel and reminder, you remind them by means of what? An ayah. You remind them by means of the words of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The third meaning is to the truth. So we have truthfully, we have with the truth, and then there is also the final to the truth. In other words, this implies there's a person who is, losing zeal, and they're losing their energy in doing the work for the sake of Allah. Because when you say to, be in the meaning of ilah here, in the meaning of ilah, what that would imply is you're reminding them of the goal for which they're engaged in this struggle. So these are the three benefits of just the ba in وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ. The word al-haq is understood also. Just the word al-haq is understood in three ways. So these were the three benefits of the ba, but now three benefits of just the word al-haq. Al-haq is understood linguistically as something you know to be true for sure, for which you don't have to be told. Something that deep inside your conscience, you just know it's true. So this implies when they counsel each other to something that their conscience already agrees with. This is the first meaning of al-haq. The second is that which can be proven true by means of evidence. In other words, you tell them something and they say, I never heard that before. I don't feel that it's true. But sometimes you tell them and they feel that it's true. But sometimes they say, I don't know. I've never heard that before. At that point, what do you have to give them? Evidence. And these things are connected. So what's the ultimate evidence that you provide someone that something is true or false? It is revelation itself. Right? So that's the second benefit. And the third is very important. The Arabic word haqq is used also when you have an obligation. What this means is you counsel each other, reminding people of their responsibilities. So much is embedded in these three word phrase, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ, in these three words. When you do this work, it will require and necessitate patience. So Allah Azza wa Jalla concludes the surah by saying, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. Sabr, the word sabr means several things. And in English, it's kind of unfair to translate it as patience. It certainly includes patience, but it includes perseverance. Perseverance implies when things become difficult, you still hang on. You still keep going, chugging along. This is persevering. It also implies commitment. In other words, you never get lazy, you never slack off. You remain committed, like you're committed to getting to work on time every day. It also implies constancy. In other words, your commitment doesn't fluctuate, it doesn't go up and down. It's the same. If you can have the same level of obedience to Allah, whether times are easy or they are difficult, then you have exercised the quality of as-sabr. That's what sabr is. So now, but Allah doesn't say, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَصَبَرُوا. This is very important. They encouraged each other and counseled each other to the best of their ability, with sincerity, truthfully, to the truth and to the obligations that they owe. And Allah didn't continue by saying, and they were patient in doing so. He didn't just say they were patient. He went a step further and said, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ, which teaches us something huge. Not only is sabr included now, meaning they were patient, they were perseverant, they remained constant, but they encouraged each other in remaining patient and constant and persevering. You know what that teaches us? You cannot keep your sabr. You need someone to counsel you and give you strength and say, listen, you need to have sabr. We need to feed, sabr feeds off of each other. The final few things I want to share with you in regards to the sequence of these 4 items. The first comment is all of these are mentioned in the past tense. So by mentioning them in the past, it is an illustration that their entire life represents these behaviors until death came to them. These are the people. In other words, you can never just stop. You can never just look. You have to reach the point where you can look back, or people will look back at your entire life and be able to say, all these 4 conditions were met.